Welcome to Global Harmonization Initiative, or shortly GHI webinar series. My name is Diana Bogiva and I'm the GHI Working Group Director. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this event. Our first webinar is starting today with the role of whistleblowing in global food safety. It is organized by Ethics in Food Safety Practices Working Group of the GHI. The group operates against the background of serious food-related incidents that have taken place in recent years, such as melamine in milk, horse meat in beef, and salmonella in peanut butter. These incidents were not accidents. They were all a manifestation of a lack of ethics in food safety practices. It is this first GHI webinar that we are starting today. And we are going to have a glimpse into the whistleblower world with speakers today. Dr. Nicola Stanley, the GHI Communications Director, who will explain the philosophy behind the GHI Whistleblower Food Safety Incidents site, a global tool providing an anonymous voice for whistleblowers. Dr. Yasmin Motaryemi, who will respond to our audience questions regarding her experience and journey as a whistleblower. And Dr. Peter Overbosch, Chair of GHI Ethics in Food Safety Practices Working Group, who will present around the world. Together with our speakers and you, the audience, will explore the web of issues that arise around the whistleblowing legal, cultural, and scientific aspects. We are very glad that you have joined us also in the audience. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please put those in the questions function. We endeavor to answer as many of those questions as possible in the time available. As I feel, this is just the start of a conversation and the beginning of a very fruitful conversations to come for a scientific community in GHI and around the world with our seminar series. Thank you, ICC, for providing this platform to enable this most important conversation. Thank you for all the helpers today, the invaluable technical assistance of Dr. Gerhard Schleining and Dr. John Tang, who will collate and present the results from our interactive polls during the webinar. You receive the link of the poll on your screen. At our first webinar today, will speak Dr. Nicola Stanley. She is the GHI Communications Director and an experienced stakeholder, researcher, educator, and communicator with a passion for the science and development of food and beverages. As an independent research consultant, she advises organizations and businesses on how to optimize their products, services, and communications to fully engage with their key stakeholders. Across the global food and beverages sector, she has worked within multinational organizations specializing in branded foods and beverages and also ingredients and flavor solutions. Nicola, who originally graduated as a food scientist and then went on to be a researcher with her PhD in sensory science, is also a visiting university lecturer in the UK, teaching on food science and food security, bachelor and master's degree programs. Nicola, it's a pleasure for us to have you with us. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nicola Stanley, and I'm the Communications Director for GHI, the Global Harmonization Initiative. And I'd like to tell you all about the GHI Whistleblower Safety Incident Report site, the philosophy behind it, how we got to where we are today, and how you can help us further on this ongoing journey. But why is this required? What's the issue? Food safety and adulteration is definitely a global concern, and with increasing trade around the world, it's becoming more of a concern. The major issue is about health. Around the world, it is estimated that almost 1 in 10 people become ill every year from eating contaminated food. Why is this being done? Well, in some cases, it's food fraud, deliberately done. It's about money. It's estimated that food fraud costs the global food industry between $30 billion and $40 billion per year. And again, the issue is widespread. It's estimated in the UK by the Food Standards Agency that about 10% of food on UK supermarket shelves is likely to be adulterated. And in India, a study was undertaken by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. They found that about a third of food samples were found to be adulterated. So these are all issues: health, money, and also it's a widespread issue. Well, what is causing unsafe food in the first place? Some of these food safety incidents are accidental. Others may be due to unavoidable systematic failure. Perhaps the food safety systems within a company are not being as diligently applied as they should be. Maybe staff have not been trained sufficiently in the appropriate company standards and procedures. And then there are the deliberate cases of food fraud. Deliberate and potentially causing harm. There is no pattern to the type of food suppliers involved, so they could be large companies, they could be small companies, they could be national or they could be international and involved in international food trade. And in many of these cases, the employees know that this is happening within their company. They are aware of the concerning food safety practices before the food leaves the factory. Sometimes these employees are not well trained and for that reason are not necessarily aware of what the correct procedures within the company should be. But if they do know about it and they are concerned, what can they do? Well, there are whistleblower schemes available, and I know that Peter's going to talk in depth about this and about legislation later on. But let's talk about whistleblower schemes for the moment. So food safety values and legislation differ between different countries and different trading blocs. National governments will enforce these in different ways, and official national whistleblower schemes may exist in some countries. Not all of them are anonymous. In fact, many of them require you to send an email, so it's identifying you as the whistleblower. These are put in place for people who want to report food safety concerns. So not necessarily just employees of the company, sometimes perhaps consumers or somebody else in the supply chain who is concerned about maybe a supplier or a customer, a company within the supply chain. And different countries, different national legislation provide different levels of protection to whistleblowers. And I know that Peter will talk about this later. So if someone does consider that they want to become a whistleblower, what can they do? And how concerned should they actually be about the process that they go through? Even with the level of protection that some countries provide, people can still be in fear of using whistleblower schemes, especially where they don't trust the process, they don't necessarily trust the organisation that's providing that. They may, for example, also be concerned that the organisation that they report it to may be in cahoots with the company that they are concerned about. They also might not want to be identified. They may not have trust in the process. Because of all of this, and with the increasing need for fast alerting of food safety issues around the world at speed, GHI set up an easily accessible and anonymous online reporting tool, which consists of a form. And you can see the top part of the form here, and we're going to look at that in a bit more detail later. So the GHI Whistleblower Food Safety Incident Report site was launched initially in August 2021, just in English to start with. A social media campaign was further communicated and picked up by many of the industry journals in food safety, so the Quality Assurance Magazine, Food Safety Magazine, and Food Safety News all ran story about it. And our campaign was very much aligned with the message, would you let your family eat food that you make at work? So it was targeted towards employees working within the food industry. The site then went through some expansion, and an extended version of it was launched in November 2021. This extended version currently has 35 plus languages on it. So it's a multi-language site. And you can see here the campaign in some other languages other than English. The PR campaign is available in many languages for anybody, including yourselves, to use for any outreach purposes or training or awareness campaigns which you feel that you would like to run in your own countries. And you can go in there, you can find the images in your language, you can find the site form, and you can find PR documents that explain the story behind the site. Anybody can pick those up and use them and run with them. Now, as part of this, we can do the best that we can from a technological point of view as GHI with our online form. For example, the online form is encrypted and cookies are not used. GHI does not know who our whistleblowers are. They remain anonymous to us. We have no way of contacting them again. When they filled out the form, that goes to us, and we then work with that form and the information that they have provided. Now, that is deliberate. It means that if anybody around the world asks us who our whistleblowers are, we can say that actually we don't know. We have nothing on file. We don't have that information. We also have within the reporting form a frequently asked question page that we recommend that all whistleblowers read before they fill out the form, because this helps them determine how they can also help themselves to remain anonymous by filling out the form in particular ways. So, for example, in the open-ended questions where they can write full text about the incident that they're concerned about, they need to avoid writing anything that could potentially identify them. So they need to think about what they're writing in that form as well. So we recommend that all the whistleblowers, if they can, will use the form through a virtual private network. We also recommend that they use their personal or public phone or computer and not one within the company. So don't use company phones and don't fill out the form when you're part of the company network, because companies may be tracking what websites their employees are on. So for that reason, we also recommend using a public network. We recommend that people fill this out using incognito or in private tabs, but the frequently asked questions tells whistleblowers how to do that for the most common browsers. So again, if you're unable to do that and you have to do it on a browser that's collecting your history, then we recommend to delete your browser history afterwards. As I said before, it's really important that whistleblowers avoid writing anything that could identify themselves. What's important for me to mention here, we are recommending that all whistleblowers, before they use our form, that they have tried to voice their concerns within their company if they're able to. If they're unable to, or they have voiced their concerns, but they've fallen on deaf ears, or the company just isn't listening, the management is not listening, then we recommend that they fill out our form. So let's have a look at the form. As you can see here, this is the direct link, and the first thing that a whistleblower does is they go through and they choose the language which they are most comfortable with using. So for the moment, we'll go through the International English form. As you can see, it describes there that we are expecting people, first of all, to try their best to have voiced their concern through the relevant managers or systems within the company that they're working in. And if they're not getting anywhere with that, then they can fill out the form. Again, we've got the frequently asked questions link here. And what we do say here is that the GHI team, once they've received a report, will check that the report is genuine. And please be aware that the facts you provide will be checked to be judged if the incident is real and indeed has the potential to do serious harm. Options here, the type of concern it could be, microbiological, chemical, physical, or other. And if it's an other, then the box opens and they can describe in there what that other is. We have lots of information in here. Has it happened before? What do you know about it? Then more particular, specific information about the product, the packaging, the weights, the ingredients, the preservatives within that, the processing procedures that it's undertaken, the barcode information or the dates that are printed on the packaging. And this is so that authorities in that country can identify these packets in the shop if they need to. So product information, volume, pack, additives, what sort of packaging it is, what the lid is, batch number, storage conditions, where the product is being stored, is it inside or outside, what temperature of storage it's at, and what is wrong. And again, if none of those options are relevant, then you have an option to click other and write in there. Then the all-important company name, the address, and the country. And then at the bottom here, we have an additional comments box for whistleblowers to write in their text. And again, we have here a reminder that they shouldn't include anything that might identify them. Now, this form is full of quite a lot of detailed information. The whistleblower does not have to fill out everything. They only need to fill out the information that they're aware of. And then they submit the form. They confirm that they filled in the form to the best of their knowledge, and then they submit the form. And then that goes then to GHI anonymously, and the GHI team then review the information. So that was a quick tour of the form. Let's talk more about this. Once the whistleblower report is received, it is classified, and all serious reports received will then be evaluated by a team of food safety experts. So the first filtering process is to determine how serious that incident is. For those classified as serious, for example, those that can cause serious harm to tumours, GHI will inform the local authorities within the country interest and ask them to investigate further. So as well as those reports coming in and the process that is associated with that, GHI will also keep a watching brief on alarming trends. So all of those alerts coming in, whether they go through the serious reporting process or not, will be kept on file so that GHI will be able to analyse the types of incidents that are being reported, the country's occurrence, and also companies involved. So that really wraps up a quick tour of the GHI Whistleblower Food Safety Incident Report site, its philosophy, its history. So what happens next? Well, you can help us with that. What you can do to help. Tell everybody about it. Go out there, shout about it, not necessarily using a megaphone, but social media, your own personal publications, whilst you're teaching, at training courses. Talk to people about it. Spread the word to colleagues, to friends, to family working in the food industry, wherever they are in the world and whatever language they speak. We will continue to add languages to our multi-country site. We have 35 plus. We are working on more. And thank you to all of our GHI global network for helping us on that. All the ambassadors around the world have been busy translating the English language form and the PR publications to their local languages. So thank you to the Global Harmonization Initiative network. If you're going to help us with this, which I hope you do, here are all the links you need, the multi-language reporting site, and also all of the PR campaign materials for you to use. And please tell us about what you're doing. Please communicate with me, nicola.stanley@globalharmonization.net. I would love to hear about the things that you're doing and the good practice that you're creating in terms of communicating the GHI Whistleblower Food Safety Incident Reporting site to the world.
Okay, and we have a question. Is there any way for the whistleblower to get feedback after?
Well, that's a really good question. No. And the reason why that's a no is because we don't know who they are They've only communicated with us through that online form. We will plan in the future, the more and more whistleblowing reports we receive, to put a summary, a very vague summary of sort of maybe countries and examples, but nothing more than that. And we will show information about what the status is with those. But for the moment, no. It's a one-way channel from the whistleblower to us, and then we will.
Okay, thank you very much. If you have any other questions for Nicola, keep putting them up. There's another question. What about if there is a violation of the part of inspections or regulatory?
Well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? And as I mentioned in my presentation, that we want to make sure that whistleblowers are not concerned that perhaps the company is in cahoots with the regulator in the organisation. We can only do our best, and what we're doing at the moment is our plan is that we will send that report from GHI headquarters based in Austria to the regulatory authorities of the country concerned, and then it's up to them to act on it if it is to. And that maybe is where there might be an issue in chain, but that's the best that we as GHI, that's where our jurisdiction sort of ends really, is we actually inform the local authority in that country.
Yeah, there's another question. What about if a company does not follow up on an internal whistleblowing report? Would this be considered as failure?
Right. Well, I think Peter's going to talk about legislation and whistleblowing legislation around the world, and hopefully some of what he's going to say is going to answer some of that question. But again, what we've got here, we've got a global system that is potentially acting as a so some companies have some really good food safety cultures, and there's certainly an increase in discussion about food safety cultures and how to increase that communication within the company through employees. Not all companies are in that situation, and we can't control whether a company decides to set up its own whistleblowing system or not. But what we do have here is we have a global system which employees can use if they are getting nowhere within there. And it is really very much a global.
There's another question. Thank you, Nicola, for this. Will the communication be by emails only, or there are follow-ups? You see, people are still concerned.
Yes. Well, yes. At the moment, it is an online form, so it's not an email. So we don't know the email address of the whistleblower. So all they do is they send this anonymous report to us, and we analyse that, we look at that. Now, the interesting thing is, if we get a pattern of lots of different reports from one company over a period of time, we are then seeing and developing a historic analysis of that particular company. So that for me is the exciting thing about this. If there's lots of whistleblowers out there all talking about one company, and that local authority in that country receives that information, then it's quite obvious. Well, it's obvious to us, it needs to be obvious to them that they need to go in and they need to investigate. It's very much at the moment, it's a one-way system, and that is to protect the whistleblower so that we have no access, we don't know who they are, we have nothing on our computers that would suggest who they are or where they come from. All we know is what the company is that they're reporting about and what the...
Fantastic. Another question. How many submissions have you received?
Well, it's early days for us at the moment, and the alert network are involved in collecting those and disseminating those among the
person is actually adding, I meant to the authority. How many submissions to the local authority?
Oh, okay. Oh, at the moment, none. At the moment, okay. It's early days for us. We've been busy working on developing our experts, our food safety network experts around the world, those that are actually going to analyse the reports and classify them as to how serious they are. So at the moment we have about 35 experts around the world, all with different expertises within food safety. We've had a couple of alerts come through. We would like more, please. I think people are getting to understand what's going on, and we would like you all to get involved and communicate to the world that this is available to people. The more information that we have, the more trends we can see, the better it is for our deterrent system.
Yeah. Another question, it's a long one with explanation. Since the possibility of GMO and also alpha toxins contamination in crops such as maize exists in several food chains of human and animal nutrition, significant systematic control requirements should be posed. On the implementation of international food safety standards in developing countries, so with weak knowledge and regulatory control can create problems. How must people control food and report?
Okay, that is a very specific technical question. How I can answer that from my communications perspective is that we have on our group, our food safety group, experts with all different expertise, and we do have mycotoxin and aflatoxin experts on that group who will review the reports that we've and decide whether that is a particular safety issue with regard to mycotoxins. So in terms of all the rest of that, there was quite a lot of detail, very specific detail on that. I can't answer that, but I would be very interested if the person that asked that question, if they could actually go through the form that's online and see whether they think that we have collected enough information to whether something is serious from a mycotoxin, aflatoxin point of view. That would be useful for us to. Thank you.
And perhaps they can make suggestions as well. Another question, and probably we'll see if we have time for a few more. What will the GHI do?
We analyse the report, we classify it as to whether it's serious, could cause serious harm to consumers or not. If it does, then our reports go to the local authority, and we expect in the particular country, we expect them to act on it. Okay, that's where our control stops in the process. That's up to them to follow it up. Where we will have our trends, we will have an analysis of what we're seeing. And the more reports we get, the more analysis we can produce. So we will then start particular trends and issues, fraudulent issues, for example, food safety, microbiological issues that might be occurring in particular countries, and also with particular companies that might be being reported. And that's where it gets very interesting for us. And that's where we could start to produce publications on what the trends are that we are.
Thank you very much, Nicola. This was really great having you. We will move on with our speaker, Dr. Yasmin, which is a whistleblower with vast experience and a long journey. She holds a master's degree in food science and technology from the University of Languedoc, France, and a doctoral degree in food engineering from the University of Sweden. After her academic career in Sweden in 1990, she joined the World Health Organization as senior scientist. In the World Health Organization, she was responsible for the surveillance and prevention of foodborne illnesses. She also served in the Secretariat of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. From 2010, Yasmin held the position of Assistant Vice President in Nestle and worked as the Corporate Food Safety Manager. In this capacity, she has, among others, developed the Nestle Food Safety Management System and managed various emerging food safety issues and crises. In addition, she was active in several industry organizations, among others, Food Drink Europe, where she advises on crisis management. She's the author of numerous publications. Among these, in 2014, she published the first encyclopedia of food safety and the book Food Safety Management, a practical guide for the food industry. The latter received a PROS award in the United States. Her latest work is on promotion of whistleblowing in an integral element of food safety, public health, and welcome, Yasmin Mortayami. It's a pleasure to have you with us. I still remember the words of the Algerian journalist Tahar Jaout used at the beginning of your story that our audience is supposed to read before joining us today. Silence is death, and if you're silent, you die. And if you speak, you die. So speak and die. Were you not scared for your safety, seeing that you were trying to achieve This is actually one of the questions we have already received from a master students class in food security and public health at University at Bedfordshire, UK. And I would like to start with this question first, because the words from Tahar Jaout and what you start with your Yasmin story are very, very.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those who are in other parts of the world. Thank you very much for this opportunity. To answer to your question, yes, of course, that I was afraid and I was concerned for many things, but my desire to fight the incorrect situation and the wrongdoing that I was seeing, that desire was much stronger than the fear that I had, and I couldn't think about my own safety or well-being because my passion for the cause for which I was fighting was.
Yeah, absolutely. I will ask the audience to start writing their questions at the question section. We'll continue with another question because you said that eager to fight was bigger than being scared. So were there any threats for you when you whistleblower?
Yes, there were. Threats are formulated in different ways. Sometimes there are open threats, verbally. Sometimes they create situations or they have a behavior which is perceived as threatening. And I just want to say that the 4 years of harassment which I went through in Nestlé was all the time I was under the threat of so. But there were also verbal threats like, you better leave, otherwise the bulldozer of Nestlé, when it will start rolling, it will crush you. Or there were times where, if you don't take this internal transfer, which was actually, forgive me for the term, but the job, if you don't take it, you will be fired and you will never find any job. We can assure you that you will be excluded from the professional world. Or they use the metaphor, and that's when, for instance, in 2009, when I met with the director of operations, global director of operations, Mr. José Lopez. He started to tell me, have I told you that when I was young, I was responsible for pest management in a factory, and I killed others. I was in a meeting talking about food safety, failures in food safety, my future, my career, my situation, but the situation of food safety in general in the company, and proposing solutions for improving the food safety situation in the company. And he's telling me such a story. And then each time we met, he kept repeating, have I told you that I have killed the cockroaches? And this case was reported to the court, and he, knowing that Nestlé has power over the judiciary system, and over also the media, this will not be reported. So he admitted it. He said, yes, I said this, but I said this in order to force her into a disgraceful or ungrateful, in French they call it ingrat, un travail ingrat. So it was in French, disgraceful job, I would say. So he justified it like that. So it was a way, a threat that you should take this internal transfer. If not, you will be dismissed, and you will.
Yeah, your career actually was kind of quite flying up career, and but why did you stay and continue working there in Nestle, seeing that you were under threat?
Well, the reason for staying changed over time, because this is a story which runs over 20 years. There were the first years up until 26 where I was seeing a lot of problems in the company, and I was trying to improve, but it was like rowing against the tide. The company was very resistant to change. Nevertheless, they were grateful that I was raising the issues, and they were appreciating, and I felt happy for the little improvement that I could bring. This gave me job satisfaction. But I remember that already at that time, knowing this culture of the company, I was talking to my friends saying that perhaps I should leave, and they kept saying me, well, it's everywhere the same. Why should you leave? And as far as you can, one life, one consumer, it's important that you stay there. Well, I stayed and I continued the work until then harassment started. When I started to see the situation of food safety was even becoming worse, and additionally there were obstruction into my work, I felt as a food safety manager, as the head of food safety, it is simply my responsibility to report to the top management. I saw this as the responsibility of the food safety manager. And I remember at that time, I had the desire to show what should be the model of a food safety manager. What is the role, the key role of a corporate food safety manager? Because on scientific issues, you have thousands of scientists who can do the work, but the real corporate food safety manager should be someone who has a good supervision over the whole thing, and when things are wrong, has the guts to report to the top. So then I saw this was my role, my responsibility. At the same time, the company was issuing statements, documents, code that you should report, because it was in 2006, and the New York Stock Exchange had issued the guidelines. This was after the Enron case, and they were promoting whistleblowing, internal whistleblowing system, and Nestle had established an internal whistleblowing system, and they were asking that staff report. So I told myself, and they were promising in their code that there would be a fair examination and there would not be any retaliation. They were making all these guarantees and promises. So I said it would be foolish of me to leave the company without trying to report it. Well, I first reported once or twice, and then when nothing happened again, of course, the option of leaving the company came to my mind. But here, another idea came to mind, and that is, if you are a doctor, you don't leave your patient. And I said, the real food safety problem is here in this company. Why should I go in somewhere else where there is no problem? And so I decided that I should stay and fight, because that is the key. And then, of course, step by step, I went further. And each time I was realizing that no, this is not working. This company is not working properly. There is a certain, and then finally I became curious. It was curiosity which kept me there, to know how far this corruption goes. Where is the root of corruption? And then when I decided to report the CEO, and that's when instead of I asked to meet the CEO to report to him what was happening in the company, instead of replying me and inviting me to a meeting, he just.
There's other questions coming up. I will go back to any legal action against Nestle, but before this, how was your family response and support during this whole?
Well, during the harassment period, harassment is something that you feel very humiliated because you're rejected, and you are so humiliated that you don't dare to say to anyone, and one gets depressed. I was depressed, and the depression means that I couldn't even look into the eyes of my friends and family. So I didn't say to anyone what was happening except her, which of course she could hear from my voice the way I was speaking. So for years I did, and of course my son too. He could see this, but I didn't say this to the larger family. When I was dismissed, then I had to explain what was happening, and well, they felt sorry, but they just said sorry. But then when I said I want to go to court and complain against Nestle, then they all blamed me for this action. Nobody supported me, perhaps except my son and my mother. Nobody else in my friends and family supported my actions. Some didn't say anything. Some actually blamed me. Why are you doing this? You are not. You don't have the power to fight a big company. And many wanted that I take the money that Nestle was offering for my silence and sign a contract and sell my silence. That's what my friends and family wanted for the most part. There were some to it.
Yeah. Adding to this question that I just asked you, people are saying like you've been harassed during the whole course of putting right things at right place, and how you keep yourself motivated and how you can think that why people are not getting a whistleblower that support of people that suffer a lot. They didn't get any support from anyone. How anyone can keep motivated. These are like a few people are asking this question because your story showed that the house is corrupt.
Yes.
People are asking, get motivated.
Yeah. I saw whistleblowing already. I saw it in the company. That was my role. But afterwards, I saw it also as my new mission. And it was my passion for my work because I realized through my experience, I realized how company culture is important for food safety management. I realized that how harassment of staff is a risk for food safety, and I realized that our whole food safety management system should be complemented by this new element, which I consider to be whistleblowing. And so I saw this as my new cause. I had a passion for food safety, so I extended. I transferred this passion for food safety to whistleblowing, and I decided to try to promote whistleblowing through my judicial fight in the court, because I had to prove that I'm speaking truth.
True. Yeah. And let's come back to the out question that you couldn't answer. Did you take any legal action against Nestle or the EU treatment?
Yes. When I decided to go to court, I had basically two issues. One, the food safety failures, and the other one was the harassment against me. But the food safety failures, I felt that it is the role of society, consumer, public health authorities to take action. So on that point, I just wrote letters to public health authorities to report to them. But on my harassment, which had ended with end of my career and my depression and ill health, So I took Nestle to court, a court which took 10 years, and it included several fighting because they also filed a lawsuit against me on several accounts. And after 10 years, I won against Nestle, and the court, the Swiss court, confirmed that Nestle top management was an accomplice of harassment. They made a fake investigation, internal investigation, and they did not follow up on my whistleblowing issues. So they condemned Nestle, but unfortunately there is no, according to the Swiss law, there is no sanction for this company. As to my food safety whistleblowing, which I tried to do through either letters to the authorities, to the organizations, through media, public speaking, there was no follow-up by public health authorities. And this was my great shock.
So Nestle wasn't sanctioned at all or banned?
Well, not only it was not sanctioned, but even they refused to compensate me for my losses. That means even judicial, which is several $100,000 or more, much more. They refuse to pay. They refuse to pay anything, even if they are condemned. So I'm still in court procedures to try to get back at least part of my fund.
Yeah. Were they no other higher management staff that complained could go to without being?
I went to all the levels, from the director of operations, director of human resources, the director of compliance, the director of corporate governance, the CEO, the president of the group. I went through director of technology, I went through all, director of finance. I went to all of them step by step, and that's why it is. Because I first tried to speak to my director of quality, try to bring him to his senses, and then when it didn't work, I went to another one, and each time I gave 3 months, 6 months for them to take action, and they didn't. They only increased the harassment. They just kept increasing.
And did you have any predecessor before you in Nestle? Did they attempted to challenge the food safety culture or not?
Yes, yes, at least 2 that I saw who were actually before me. They were complaining about a lot of things, and one of them was sidelined, and he accepted that because they get very good salary. They get this good salary, but they put them in a corner. They don't have anything to do with the company. They are just there to get their salary. And then another one who was very often fighting with the management about their resistance to bring improvements. He, at the end, I think he took a golden handshake.
So there were also...
Yeah, and then there has been certainly other cases, but I remember one case which I wrote a story about it, which will be published soon. And this was when I was reprimanding our ice creamers for designing an ice cream which was safe. And I told them, how can you imagine thinking to produce such an ice cream? And then one of them raised his hands. He said, there were many who protested against this ice cream, but they...
Yeah, other question from the audience. Are you still associated with other whistleblower? Do you meet other people, also whistleblower, and also going through the same as you did, helping them actually too?
Yes. I am in connection with some whistleblowers, international whistleblowers in different sectors like finance, schools, and so on. And we have a network. We often share our stories and experience. We exchange our experience. But there are also people who very often, when I have read my story, they come to me and they ask for advice how to.
Yeah, what about if they're from a country that does not allow them to take any actions? So what?
Well, you see, the thing is that there is no one single answer to all whistleblowers, because it all depends on their age, their family situation, the issue, their financial situation, the law of the country. So always my responses is very specific to their situation. I cannot give one single answer to everyone. It's very, very dangerous.
Yeah,
Some
absolutely.
people, yeah, so, I mean, if in the country, because for me, you know, the person who comes to meet me, for me, he is as important as the consumer that I try to protect. You see,
Yeah.
why should I tell him something that, yes, go and blow the whistle, knowing that he and his family might be in danger, different type of danger? Why? Why? I think when this person comes to me, for me, his health and his well-being is my. And so, but if he has suffered so much that he, like me, is really eager to blow the whistle, okay, I can show him ways to do it, to put him in contact with organizations, to help him with lawyers and so on, to help him. But if not, I think it's so much also about family.
Absolutely. Are they global regulatory bodies that could have helped? Were they informed, and what was?
Unfortunately, this is a very good question, and this is something that my experience shows, that in a world which is dominated by multinational companies, more and more, we need an international regulatory body, because sometimes when whistleblowers like me, who was working at a head office where the issues affect the whole world, I mean, we need to report to an international body. And unfortunately, there is no such a body. There is, of course, WHO, World Health Organization, and FAO, but these are not regulatory bodies. They have no power of actions. They are just providing technical advice and guidance. And I did report to WHO and to WHO, but not directly addressing them, because I knew they were powerless, by copy of my letters to them, in order to make them aware of the whole issue of whistleblowing, to make them aware that we need to work on this subject area. But I did report to the European Commission, and I did write to the European Commission, and I was very pleased to be received by the European Commission. And since some of the incidents which had happened, some of the problems were actually in Europe, partly I was in Sweden, and then some of the babies who died were in France, I did report to the European Commission. But unfortunately, the European Commission either didn't have the competence to understand the issue, or they didn't want to understand. And they gave me an answer which was, for me, totally nonsense. And it was a great disappointment. And what I learned from that experience is that authorities, when it comes to whistleblowing, authorities are focusing. And here I would like to ask Gérard, if it's possible, you show my second slide, contaminated. Authorities are focusing on the end of the chain. That means on the contaminated products or people who are sick. And so they tell me, oh, if you know there is a product which is contaminated, or people who have become sick, go and report to the national authorities. That's what basically some of the authorities would respond. But I say, you are talking here about incident and crisis management. But when we are talking about food safety management, we have, as food safety manager, we have to act before the incident happens. So I am now coming to tell you about the company culture, the conditions which can lead to errors, manager decisions which are wrong, and which are the cause of these incidents. For instance, the harassment. I realized through my experience that harassment of staff cause fear, and fear makes that people will report failures or wrongdoing. Harassment will lead to obstruction of work, and the food safety manager cannot do its work. It's like a pilot that cannot do his job in a plane. The plane will not be security. So, for instance, in Nestlé, in 2005, they linked bonuses to product recall. Now, this has nothing to do with incidents and product contamination. This has to do with a policy which actually has the potential for managers to leave a contaminated product or to neglect on consumer. So these kind of issues are not understood. The internal management system, if there are failures in the internal management system of the company, the authorities are not interested. They are mainly interested in seeing if there is a contaminated product on the market. And that's incident management. Food safety management means taking preventive actions, making all the measures upstream so that the conditions are appropriate for the employees to do their work and to fill in. So this was a big disappointment that I had from European Commission. I mean, they told me something very ridiculous. Like they said, we have HACCP and our inspectors are well trained in HACCP. So there is, but HACCP is not a panacea for all the problems. It doesn't cover the whole matter.
Yeah, right. There's another from the audience. They're feeling sorry for what happened to you, but they believe was for a good cause. Which advice may you give for a new and young, especially? Which strategy you should use to prevent such implications? What?
I can tell you what I regret is that I didn't keep a diary of. I really recommend that you keep, for every person working, to keep a diary and write everything which happens every day, even because when things go wrong, for me, what was important is that I could pull out a lot of documents which I never thought that I will one day use, which was, for instance, all the compliments that I was receiving from my colleagues. So when Nestlé tried to defame me in the court, so I pulled out all the letters of compliments that I was receiving. So a lot of documents that you may think that is useless. I mean, it's not important. It's not proof of their wrongdoing. Nevertheless, can become important if you are going to court, because the company will try to defame you, and for this they will pull all kinds of tricks, and you will find documents important. So that is one key issue. Second, you should know yourself, your values. It's very important to know what is your values, what is it, and also save money. Save money as much as you can, so that when things go wrong, you have resources to. I mean,
do you have any specific recommendations to promote food safety ethics in organizations? And this will be our probably last question for now, because the time is advancing and we have another speaker. So do you have any recommendations?
I think top managers should be sanctioned for the wrongdoing. I mean, often I mention Nestle, but I shouldn't be mentioning Nestle. I should be mentioning the Nestle managers, and they should personally be sanctioned. Because if you make a company pay $1 million, 2 million, 10 million, whatever, the managers, they don't care. They say, okay, the company. You see, the director of quality of Nestle came to court and said most horrible things because it didn't matter for him. He came and said, I don't care about science and scientists. I take my information from the cookbook. That's what he said. Because the cook was asking him, how come you were not paying attention to your scientists? Or the other director, when they, what is the importance of food safety manager in your company from scale of 1 to 10? And he said 4 to 5. That was the importance of food safety. Food safety importance is not more than 4 to 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. So what I want to say is that these managers who are in the company, and they say a lot of things, so all words, they don't feel accountable. They are not accountable in front of the law. At best, the company will pay $1 million, which is calculated in the. But these managers have to go to prison times. When they make a fraudulent investigation, which has been proven in my case, the court declared that the investigation that they did was fraud, and it was an. They tampered with records when just before an incident which happened in the United States, where 70 people got sick with E. coli 157 connected witness. They had removed my name from the organizational chart, so that the FDA does not. This is tampering words. And today, what is happening at these, they benefit from full immunity. If we want to change things, we have to make sure that they become accountable and they are set. Today is the or the food safety person who wants to do his or her work with ethics, who isn't. And those who are doing wrong things, they are promoted. The head of the regulatory department of Nestle today, this is a lady who was my old colleague and good friend. She came to court, died. And right after, 6 months after, she was promoted to the guy who was condemned by court as a mobber harasser and was responsible for death of. After his return, he was selected as the mayor of. At the same time as the court declares him as a in his hometown, he is selected as the mayor of town. So we need citizens to get up and to say no, it's not acceptable. And I would like just to finish with one last thing about corruption in academia, because corruption starts. You have the lawyer of who was presenting a false investigation report, denying harassment, lying in the court, providing documents. He is a professor of labor law at university. So we teach our children to be honest, correct, and then they go to university to learn how to lie legally, lie in a way that they are not. So when university professors have ethics and they are not accountable for their well, we cannot expect anything better from the rest of the.
Yeah. I'll have my last question to you, and I will expect short answer because we are really advanced time. How is doing today, Yasmin?
I am bitter. I have lost weight. I'm very sad, extremely sad and shocked. I continue shocked and bitter and sad. What can I say? It's not very easy to live this situation when you see so much corruption. I would like just to say that my story is far beyond what happened in Nestle. It's not a Nestle story. It's a Nestle is about the corruption of our society. And that's why I always, why do you look at the fish if you see that the contaminated? You see, so we have a whole system which is dysfunctional. Judicial system is dysfunctional in many countries of the world, and our scientists are not even this, are not thinking that if they do their work right and they are punished for it and they go to court, what happens in court? So if you look, if they examine my court procedure, which I have still not written about it and not described it, you will be told how our judicial system is working. How come unions, syndicates, they are not acting? Consumer organizations not reacting? BBC censored my interview. How come the media is not reporting when the top management of the biggest food company in the world is accused?
Because there are many powerful people that are above all of the.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But I hope there are more people like you to speak out and not die. Please don't die out and continue. Doesn't matter that you feel sad, the things that are in front of you for good. And I believe that younger generation are becoming really good people, good citizens that will see things and report things in the right way. I truly believe in this.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. It was a big pleasure to have you with us. I will just run quickly the second poll, and we'll continue with our third and last list. So second poll is running now. How important for the global impartial organization like GHI to play a role in helping whistleblower report concerns? A few more seconds to do your poll, and John Tank will be reporting the session. And we'll continue now with our speaker, Dr. Peter Overbosch. He's a chair of the GHI Working Groups of Ethics in Food Safety Practices. Peter was until 2014 as the Vice President of Corporate Quality Assurance, Metro Cash and Carry, and before that, a Senior Director Quality Crafts Foods Europe and Latin America, Head of Quality for Unilever Food. Peter is currently working with the European Hygienic Engineering and Design Group and GFSI to integrate hygienic design requirements into the serious standards. Within the Global Harmonization Initiative, he heads up the working group of ethics in food safety practices, the group that made possible this webinar for you. Peter is a Netherlands citizen and has a PhD in chemistry from the University of Amsterdam. It's a great pleasure to have you, and welcome, Peter. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Diana. I'll try and share my screen. Before I go into this, I would like to briefly react to both something that Yasmin said and something that Nicola said. Yasmin at one point said she said it, but ultimately did not go somewhere where no problem. And I can say, having worked in a number of places, that there probably is no such place. Problems are not always the same. Problems are not always as serious, but there are always problems. And at a place where I once worked there, so there was in a large company again, there was a manufacturing site director who received a very critical audit. And basically what the audit said is, your manufacturing site is dirty. You should clean it up. And his reaction at that point was, we are a manufacturing site, not a cleaning site. Which I think was a great summary of how he felt, but his superiors in head office were not happy, and he was replaced. And then his successor came in, and I was asked to come over there. And the worry was that it was probably not just this technical director who had those feelings, but a lot of people on site felt that, well, they were a producing company and not a cleaning company. So how would we change their attitude? And what we came up with was exactly what Nicola mentioned. Would you let your family eat the food you make at work? And so we said, we'll have a family day. And in 3 weeks' time, on a Saturday, we'll have all the families come over and give them a tour of the factory. But we think that they would like to see a somewhat cleaner place. And since a lot of these families eat these products every day, you don't want to have your partner at home afterwards telling you that, well, at home it's a lot cleaner than in the factory, and should we eat this stuff again? So that changed people's attitudes, and they cleaned things up, and we had a wonderful family day. And then, of course, we said, this is not just for the family day, this is for every day. So what do we need to do to keep it this way? We did that in a couple of sites, and it worked. Going to my presentation, the whistleblowing legislation, the food sector status and direction. You heard a lot from Yasmin, and she has been the main person in collecting all this information, and supported there by Huub and myself. As an introduction, whistleblowing is the final safety valve in food safety management systems. And really say, in engineering terms, this is standard practice. There are safety valves, pressure valves. There are, in a pasteurizer, you have a flow diversion valve, which kicks in if things are wrong inside one way or another. In electricity, you have a fuse that blows. And whistleblowing is really the same kind of function, and it should belong to standard food safety management systems. But it's not mentioned in ISO 22000, which is about food safety, and it's not mentioned in GFSI benchmarking requirements. And GFSI benchmarking requirements, GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative, really rules the world in terms of audits and certification. So if you have a BRC certificate or an FSSC certificate or any other type of certificate in the food world, that really is something that you need to have for people to accept your products there. Then still a whistleblowing paragraph is not included in all that, which is something that probably, if we want to have this understood and required all throughout the foods industry, we probably should have. We found that whistleblowing and whistleblowing protections are, but not always, mentioned in legislation all over the world, and Nicola has already told you something about that. There's an EU directive to be implemented by the end of 2021, but as Yasmin said, she talked to the European authorities and she came away less than impressed. So it is there, it is a start, but we're not yet there. We sent out a questionnaire to the GHI ambassadors in 64 countries in 2020. We got responses from 27, so it's that was probably a little bit less than we hoped, but it's also a reflection on the state of affairs there. There was no whistleblowing legislation in 11 of those. Now, of course, the world has a lot more than 64 countries, but still this is what we could get, and it is a fair number. So already from that point on, we concluded that things probably needed to improve. And the focus of the legislation is generally more on the mechanism of reporting rather than real protection and compensation of whistleblower. And when you heard Nicola about the GHI whistleblowing side, there was a lot of emphasis on the protection of whistleblowers. Because if you don't properly protect them, then all kind of stuff might happen to them. And of course, Yasmin's story was a vivid illustration of all that. That is as important, or probably even more important, than the mechanism of reporting. Then a number of conclusions there. So if you look at all this and say where whistleblowing legislation exists, food safety is often not mentioned specifically. There is in many cases a question of, it's nice to have whistleblowing legislation, but what does it apply to? Would it apply to, for instance, functions, official functions within the authorities and so on, or does it not? And can you have whistleblowers that are in the military? Can you have whistleblowers? Where does it apply and where does it not apply? And so food safety should be specifically mentioned. It's very important and it needs to be clearly specified. On the other hand, if you look at it from the other perspective, from food law, then in food law there is no connection, usually no connection to whistleblowers. And again, if you probably should do it from both sides, but anyway, it should also be from the food law side. A very curious conclusion was that food safety experts often were unaware of whistleblowing legislation and say it's not part of my education, it's not part of my day-to-day job, I simply don't know. Could you give me 2 more months to talk to some legal friends and we can find out there, which is curious. But it illustrates that whistleblowing indeed is not high on the awareness of food safety experts. And our conclusion has been that whistleblowing should be recognized as an essential element of any food safety management system, as we said in one of the very first slides, and be included in food safety education. People should understand that this is the safety valve that is a necessary element in a food safety system and therefore belongs in the education of food safety experts. They should understand what it is for, what it is supposed to do, and how you are supposed to look at it, and what should prevent it. And in Nicola's talk, you already saw that people are asked if they fill in the have you tried to work within the company to get your concerns addressed, and only if that doesn't work, then step forward and blow the whistle here. If it's included in a food safety management system, then it starts with all the measures not to let the pressure rise so highly that people are forced to blow the whistle. So what needs to be done to prevent this? But also, if apparently it cannot be prevented, how does it work and how should we deal with this? And maybe you have to do it yourself as a food safety expert, and under what conditions would you, and so on. Then, again, as illustrated by Yasmin, whistleblowers often face retaliation. Revelation of their identity, again addressed by Nicola with the website, bullying, harassment, termination, the whole lot. They need legal and financial support. And the legislation will only succeed if individual whistleblowers can count on clear protection against all forms of retaliation. At this moment, that is clearly not the case. And so I can speak from being a Dutchman. We have something in Holland that started a couple of years ago, the House of Whistleblowers, and somewhat official. It was started through the authorities, a place where you can go as a whistleblower and get support and all kinds of good advice and so on. But a couple of years down the road, we find that that has not been a great success. There is still retaliation against the whistleblowers. There's little that this House of Whistleblowers can do or has actually done. And the problem lies in the legislation. There is no clear protection against all forms of retaliation. And we're struggling with this at all levels. Then the treatment of the complaint itself. We previously said there is, if there's whistleblowing legislation, it's mostly about how you file a complaint and so on, which is fine, but still treatment of the complaint itself, including procedures and timelines for response, is often unclear and inadequate. So people are made to wait. And people don't hear back on this. Well, you're not going to hear back on this through the GHI website because that is anonymous, but still, in cases where this is not anonymous and people step forward, they need to understand how the procedure is going to work. And usually you cannot afford to wait for years until something happens. So things need to progress in a clear and transparent way, and they need to proceed at a good pace. Whistleblowing complaints need to be handled with urgency and within clear procedures prescribed and protected by legislation. That is in most cases not what we have at this moment. Then whistleblowing is the subject of various definitions, and that is, of course, to a certain extent what the Global Harmonization Initiative is all about. It is a problem if whistleblowing is not understood to be the same everywhere. And I think there's a great opportunity, and there would be a lot of benefit for harmonization around the world, standard definition of what whistleblowing is, and then you can go into all that stuff. So at the end of this, we recommended GHI to develop a whistleblowing guideline covering the full scope of whistleblowing procedures, from reporting to corrective action, and all the elements of action. In all that, we can use the information from existing legislation and the experience of whistleblowers worldwide. There is a lot there. As you can see on various of these slides, I have used little pictures that I got from the internet. If you search for whistleblowers and little pictures, then you get tons of this stuff, which means that people do know around the world and people try to do something about that. But still, as this overview of legislation demonstrates, there is still a lot to be done. So the awareness to a certain extent is there. There are lots of actions, but progress is still slower than we would like. And so we use the information from existing legislation and experience worldwide to facilitate the integration of whistleblowing into national food legislation worldwide. That is something that typically the GHI is all about. And our next step then would be to ask GHI whether they indeed are prepared to start developing such a guideline that would then in all probability still be within the scope of the ethics working group that Jasmine and I both belong to. That would be to us the logical step forward if we get the support for that. And with that, I would like to thank you. I think I recovered a little bit of time, Diana. Why not?
Yeah.
So that should be good news. So I'm open to questions.
There are a few questions for you. Are there any initiatives by World Health Organization or Food and Agriculture Organization to address whistleblowing? This is the first one. Can you answer this?
Well, I would say not that I'm aware of. I see a lot of individual private initiatives companies who say, well, Yasmin also mentioned that companies who say, well, we offer protection to whistleblowers, which is all fine, but without strong legislation, it's not going.
Yeah. And this is a question, the next one is actually probably a question between you and Yasmin. Are there whistleblower protections in Switzerland where the story of Yasmin, but yeah, Yasmin want to answer?
Unfortunately, there is no protection for whistleblowers in Switzerland. It's actually worse than that because whistleblowing in Switzerland is prohibited, except for the Canton of Geneva, which has just passed a new law allowing this for only public but for companies, no. In anywhere in Switzerland is not allowed, and some whistleblowers have gone to jail for reporting. When I was dismissed, I received a letter saying that if I reveal internal information, it will be against the law, and I can be subject to a lawsuit.
Yeah, thank you.
Which I was, by the way. Nestlé did complain to the court and objected to the fact that I had given public speech.
Yeah, so there's no legislation basically. And another question, I'm not sure who wants to take on this one. So you wanted to add something, Yasmin, sorry?
Yeah, I have sent you the reference to an article which is called "It's Time for Switzerland to Meet Global Standards." And if you could share this with the participants, they can see of the situation in Switzerland.
Yeah, this is good. Gerhard, may I ask you to do this? Another question we have from the audience, I'm not sure who will take on this one. How can we promote and encourage the whistleblower report things presented GHI if we are not directly associated with the food? Who wants to answer?
Yeah, it's not easy,
Peter?
but there's probably in your country there's probably some activity around whistleblowing. The report that I just presented a very brief summary of can be found on the GHI sites. And if you want to do something, then you could reach out to the people who are active on whistleblowing in your country, share the GHI report with them and say that, well, it might be helpful if we try and an activity to make this a more global and legislation-based thing. So it's really GHI. We will be working with GHI to get this initiative to the next phase, but we will also need cooperation from basically every country in the world. So if you can reach out and raise awareness in your country, that ultimately.
This is good. Thank you very much, Peter, for the answer. And I have a question for you, because you are the main person that is responsible for the ethics in food safety practices. So is it easy to operate against, standards, the lack of ethics in food safety?
Well, we felt that it was very important to start this as a separate working group, but really, of course, this fits right into what is in the meantime an initiative in a great many countries, food culture. And culture is always also ethics. So it is not that at this moment we are rowing against the tides here. There is a tide in the direction of food safety culture. Whistleblowing and the ethics working group would fit right into that. And so I do not perceive it as something that is exceptionally difficult. That is not to say that we don't have a whole lot of work to do. Of course we do. But I think it is about the right time to try.
Thank you very much. I think that this was the last question so far I can see. If there is another question, probably it will be written at the chat. Thank you very much. Now let's pass to John, and Dr. John Tang will report the results from our poll. Over to you, John.
So today we have 2 polls. So the first one is, what extent do you believe that the whistleblowers can play an important role in food safety? Okay, so 90% believe. Okay, 90% believe that the whistleblower plays an important role. Okay, important role in the food. And then second 4 questions: how important it is for the global impartial organizations like GHI to play a role. So 71% believe is very about it. So I believe is most of the respondents are very shows it's very important to have organizations to play in this part of whistleblower. Yeah, over to you, Diana. That's all for the report for the poll.
Overview. Thank you, Dr. Nicola Stanley, the GHI Communications Director, for explaining the philosophy behind the GHI whistleblower food safety incident side. Thank you, Dr. Yasmin Motayemi, for inspiring us with your vast experience and brave journey as a whistleblower. And thank you, Dr. Peter Overbosch, the chair of GHI Ethics and Food Safety Working Group, for organizing this webinar and for presenting the results of the review of whistleblowing legislation around the world. Thank you, Dr. Gerhard Schleining, co-assistants. This wasn't going to be possible without you. And Dr. John Tang for collating and presenting the results from the interactive poll during the webinar. Thanks goes to all of you, our audience, being part of our whistleblowing journey. Thank you for being with us, and see you next month on Thursday, 28th of April, when we'll be presenting the webinar of Chemical Food Safety Working Group. Stay safe, healthy, and curious.